So some minchags happen, some customs happen. If you guys can start escorting people up one family at a time, however. So some customs happen because they just sort of happen and it becomes a family thing. You guys have heard those kind of stories? Well, this is one of those customs that has sort of happened in our community, is to tell this story in the afternoon of Yom Kippur. Once upon a time, there was a fixer. A fixer who made his living fixing things. That's what he did. And he was always happy because every day he'd fix some things for all the different people and he'd make some money and then he'd go home. He'd buy, before he went home, he'd go to the market, he'd buy some challah and some wine, he'd be so happy. Well, one day the king of the kingdom was this kind of king, and we wanted to see how unhappy his subjects were. And so this king decided to dress up like he wasn't a king, and he went around the village. And he walked around the village, and you know what? The king was ecstatic because everyone was miserable. You know that kind of guy? Yeah. They belong to the other congregation. So, they're all the ones out there. They're the ones who live elsewhere. Okay? They're all the others. Never us. We never act like that. But so anyhow, the king has that, and he walks around, and then he gets to the home of the fixer. The fixer is inside his home, and he's dancing. And so the king knocks on the door. And the fixer... And there's a doorbell too. He rang the doorbell too. And so the fixer opens the door. He says, Shalom Aleichem. And the king says, why are you so happy? And the fixer says, oh, what's not to be happy about? You know, every day I work, I do a little fixing. I get to help people. I celebrate God. I get some wine. I get some bread. I celebrate God. I dance in here. Baruch Hashem, life is beautiful. Come have some wine and bread with me and let's dance. And the king, for those few moments, was happy because he was having wine and bread. And he went home and he was a little shooker. And he got home, and there when he was home, he woke up in the morning with a little tiny bit of headache. And so he made a new law. He's going to show this fixer for being happy. He made it illegal to fix anything. So the poor fixer got up in the morning, and he got up and he was told he couldn't fix anything. He didn't know what to do, but he never lost hope. He had lots of faith. And he knew to have faith in God. God is always there. And so he saw Mrs. Goldberg carrying some potatoes. He said, Mrs. Goldberg, can I carry potatoes for you? So he carried potatoes for her. She gave him a few little coins. He went to Mrs. Rabinowitz. He carried some other things for her. He went to Mrs. Chunulik. That was the Russian one. Mrs. Chunulik. And so he went to her, and he got some yams. He thought about another Mrs. Somebody, but she didn't like what they were carrying. So he said, nobody. But he raised a lot of money this way. He got his money at the end of the day. He bought his wine and his challah. He went home. And that evening, the king came to see how miserable he was. And the king came and knocked on his door and rang his doorbell. Doorbell was missing a note that time. So, and so the king says, oh, you're so happy. And the fixer says, of course I'm happy. Well, it's not to be happy about. You know, the king made it illegal to fix things, but I gathered things and I carried things. And I then went and I got my wine and my challah and everything was good. Come have some wine and challah with me. They ate and they drank and they celebrated and they danced. And what ended up happening is they drank more. The king was happier because he was more sugar than he was the night before. And then the next morning he woke up with a bigger hangover. He said, I'm going to get that Jew. So he made it illegal to carry anything for anybody else. The little Jew woke up, little fixer, couldn't fix anything, couldn't carry anything, didn't know what he was going to do for a living, but he knew he always had faith with God. And so he went and he said to himself, you know, I know a place that always is looking for workers, the local army. So he went to the local army, to the division, and he said, look, here's what I want you to do. I'll make a deal, I'll work for you, but you got to pay me at the end of every day. This is what he said, the quartermaster, pay me every day, and we're fine. You need soldiers, the quartermaster said, well, you certainly do need soldiers, fine. And he gave little fixer his little soldier hat, and gave him his little soldier belt, and gave him a soldier sword, a little scabbard, a metal sword that goes in it. And so he gave him that, and then when he gave him that, at the end of the day, he got paid. The fixer went and he got his money, he got his challah, he got his wine, he started dancing and drinking that night, disguised as a regular villager who should show up, knocking at the door, ringing the doorbell. but the king. And the king shows up. He says, "You're happy?" The Jewish fixer, he says, "Of course I'm happy. I have faith in God. What's not to be happy about? I enlisted in the army and I made a deal with the quartermaster that I could get paid. I could get paid at the end of every day. I think I need to get paid in batteries." Well, maybe not. We'll see. Yeah, I definitely get paid in batteries. That's all right. That's all right. We'll get paid in batteries somehow. If this is not working. Do we have batteries? Orlando or... I lost Orlando. Well, that's all right. That's okay. Because I can be heard anyhow. I told you, got one on the Orthodox Rabbi right now. All right? Someone sees Orlando, I know he's got some batteries on. All right, so can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Of course, that's a silly question because if you wouldn't respond, would you? So, he knocked on the door. He rang the doorbell. And the fixer opened the door. The king said, "What are you so happy about?" He goes, "You know, I enlisted in the army. And I made a deal with the quartermaster to pay me at the end of every day. And they had bread and they had wine and they danced. And they got more than shikker, more than very shikker. They got schnocker." So, that next morning, you can imagine the king was more than schnockered. He was very hungover. And then what happened is the king calls him his quartermaster. He says, "Look, we've got some financial issues. You cannot pay anyone until the end of the month." Well, the end of the day came, little fixer came to the quartermaster. He said, "What, I'd like my money." The quartermaster said, "I'm sorry, we're not allowed to pay you." Little Jew didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to do. So what did he do? He realized he's a fixer. He fixes things. He always has faith in God. He took his metal sword, which whoever needs the sword anyhow, cut off the metal blade. Replace it with wood. Took the metal of the blade, went to a pawn shop and sold it. It was enough money to last him the whole month. This was his idea. At the end of the month, he'll get paid, he'll fix it. No one will know the difference. He goes back, he gets his wine and his bread, and the king comes. Now he's sure the fixer's in trouble. King comes, he knocks on the door. He rings the doorbell. He's so excited he kicks the door. And the little Jew fixer lets him in. And he lets him in and he says, the king says, "You're so happy." He goes, "Well, I'm really happy, but don't tell anybody why. They made it illegal to pay me at the end of every day. But I don't need the sword, so don't tell anybody. What I did is I cut off the metal blade of the sword. I replaced it with a wooden blade. No one will know. Don't tell anyone, especially anybody who knows the king. And let's have some wine and challah." They had wine and they had challah and they celebrated and they were joyous and they had lots of drinking and lots of dancing. They were well beyond shikker or schnocker and they were drunk. Thank you. And so they got drunk. Oh, that's much better. Thank you so much. And so they got drunk and they were happy and the morning came and they were silly. But the morning came and the poor king, now he really had a headache. And now he's angry. He's been tricked by a Jewish fixer. Some guy with faith, and he messed with his sword, and so he says to his jailer, his head jailer, he says, "Do we have any prisoners who need to be killed, have been convicted of murderers?" The jailer says, "Yeah, actually we do. We have this one guy who's been convicted of murder. We're going to have to execute him eventually. Why?" King says, "I want you to all my soldiers up. Bring them all up here." So he called all the soldiers up, and he had this poor person over here, this person who was the victim that was going to be executed. And all the little soldiers are there, including our beloved fixer with his little fake sword and his little hat and his little... And so he goes and he says, to really show the devotion of all my soldiers, I'm going to ask that one of you be the executioner on this day. And he points to the little fixer, "You! Come and kill this man that has been executed." Well, the fixer is now terrified. The fixer gets up and he goes, "But your majesty." And he doesn't recognize the king because the king's in royal clothes. He goes, "Your majesty. But what if he's innocent?" And the king says, "He's not innocent. He's been tried by the guilty, by the jury of his peers, by myself, the king. We are infallible. He is obviously innocent." "Well, but your majesty, what if there was a mistake?" "There's no mistake. Kill him." "Well, what if there was?" "Well, I don't want to make a mistake." "Kill him." So the little fixer realizes he has no choice if he doesn't want to lose his own head. And in his wisdom and his faith in God, he goes up to the man who's about to be executed with his sword. He says his prayer. Puts his hand on his sword. He says, Rabbeinu Shalom, Master of the universe. If this man is guilty, please let my blade be swift, fast, painless, and good and successful. But if this man is innocent, please God, change the sword to wood. And the king cannot control himself. This is a Rebbe Nachman story. The king realizes what real wisdom is faith in God and joy. And so he becomes the chief minister to the king. We continue our service. Bravo! Did you like the doorbell?